Narration. Music. Imagine a land where history, faith, and conflict have intertwined for thousands of years, creating a story so complex that it continues to shape the world today. This is the story of Israel and Palestine, two peoples locked in a struggle over the same piece of earth, a land sacred to millions. Located on the eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea, Israel is the world's only Jewish state, while Palestine represents the homeland of the Arab population living under Israeli control in areas like the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Their conflict is one of the most enduring and heartbreaking disputes of our time, marked by violence, loss, and a desperate search for peace. To really understand how this all began, we must travel back thousands of years, to a time when the foundations of this struggle were first laid. Let's start at the very beginning. Around the 17th century BC, the Jewish people trace their origins to three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who, according to religious texts, were called by God to settle in a region known as Canaan. This area roughly matches modern-day Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, and parts of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. Over time, this land became known by many names: the Land of Israel, the Promised Land, Palestine, or simply the Holy Land. By 1000 BC, King Saul established the first Israelite monarchy. Later, King David made Jerusalem the capital of his kingdom, and his son, King Solomon, built the first temple there, a sacred site for the Jewish people. But after Solomon's death, the kingdom split into two: the kingdom of Israel in the north, with Samaria as its capital, and the kingdom of Judah in the south, with Jerusalem at its heart. For centuries, this land was primarily home to the Jewish people. But it didn't stay that way. Over time, it faced countless invasions and conquests by different empires, each leaving its mark and reducing the Jewish population. One of the most significant conquerors was the Roman Empire. They renamed Judah as Palestine, a deliberate move to weaken the Jewish connection to the land. During Roman rule, Christianity emerged from a small Jewish sect, and eventually became the dominant religion in the region by the end of the Roman Empire. Then, in the 7th century, Arab forces swept in, bringing Islam to the land. They built the Dome of the Rock on the ruins of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, making the city a holy place for three major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The centuries that followed were turbulent. In the 11th century, the Seljuk Turks, a powerful Central Asian empire, persecuted Christians in Jerusalem, prompting European Christians to launch the Crusades. These were a series of wars aimed at reclaiming the holy city for Christianity. During this chaotic period, many Jews were killed, while others fled or made pilgrimages to safer places, often in Western Europe. From the 16th century until the early 20th century, the Holy Land, along with much of the Middle East, fell under the control of the Ottoman Empire, a vast Islamic power. During this time, the region was unofficially referred to as Palestine. While the Ottomans ruled the land, a new movement was stirring among Jews in Europe. Called Zionism, it was a call to return to their ancient homeland and create a Jewish national state. By the early 1900s, tens of thousands of Jews began migrating from Europe back to the region, hoping to rebuild their lives in the land of their ancestors. But this return wasn't without tension, as the Arab population already living there also claimed the land as their home. Then came World War I, a global conflict that changed everything. The Ottoman Empire collapsed, and its territories in the Middle East were divided between the British and French empires. Britain took control of a region they called the British Mandate for Palestine. In 1917, through the Balfour Declaration, Britain promised to support the establishment of a national homeland for the Jewish people in this area. This promise came into effect in 1923. However, as more Jews arrived, tensions with the Arab population grew. Both groups felt they had a rightful claim to the land, and by the 1930s, these tensions erupted into violence. The situation became even more complicated during the 1930s, as the Nazi regime rose to power in Germany. Fearing persecution, many Jews fled Europe to Palestine. In response, Britain placed limits on Jewish immigration to avoid further conflict with the Arabs. But this decision angered many Jews, leading to the formation of Jewish militias that fought both the Arabs and the British authorities. Then came the Holocaust, a horrific genocide during World War II that claimed the lives of nearly 6 million Jews. After the war, survivors sought refuge in Palestine, desperate for a safe homeland. This influx of Jewish immigrants intensified the already strained relations with the Arab population, and Britain, overwhelmed by the growing unrest, began to withdraw from the region. After World War II, the newly formed United Nations stepped in with a plan to resolve the conflict. In 1947, they proposed partitioning Palestine into 2 independent states, one for the Jews and one for the Arabs, with Jerusalem designated as an international zone under special status. However, the plan gave the Jewish population, who made up only 1/3 of the total population at the time, 5% of the land. The Arab leaders rejected this proposal, seeing it as unfair, and tensions escalated further. Volunteer Arab armies began forming across Palestine in opposition to the plan. Less than a year later, in 1948, as Britain completed its withdrawal, Israel declared itself an independent state. This declaration marked the beginning of a new and even bloodier chapter in the conflict. Almost immediately, war broke out between the newly formed State of Israel and its Arab neighbors. Known as the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, this conflict involved 5 recently independent Arab nations: Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, under the banner of the Arab League. Their goal was to create a unified Arab Palestine. But after a year of fighting, a ceasefire was reached. Israel emerged with control over more than 2/3 of historic Palestine, including West Jerusalem. Jordan took control of East Jerusalem and the West Bank, while Egypt occupied the Gaza Strip. Tragically, this war forced over 750,000 Palestinians from their homes in an event they call Al-Nakba, meaning the catastrophe. Many of these refugees and their descendants have never been allowed to return to their ancestral lands. The years that followed saw no peace. More wars and skirmishes erupted as the divide between Israelis and Palestinians deepened. One of the most significant conflicts was the Six-Day War in 1967. After a period of rising tensions and border clashes, Israel launched a swift and decisive military campaign against Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. In just 6 days, Israel gained control of the Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Gaza Strip and Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. Though Israel later returned Sinai to Egypt under a peace treaty in 1979, the other territories remained under Israeli control. This war further displaced Palestinian families, many of whom were forced to live as refugees in Gaza, the West Bank, or neighboring countries like Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. As Israeli control over Palestinian territories grew, so did resistance. In 1964, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO, was founded in Cairo, Egypt, with the goal of creating a liberated Palestine. Initially based in Jordan, the PLO launched attacks against Israel. After being forced out of Jordan, they moved to Lebanon, where they continued their fight, sometimes resorting to acts of terrorism. The conflict escalated, including an Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982, to push the PLO out of Beirut. Eventually, the PLO agreed to a two-state solution, dividing the land between Israel and Palestine. But peace remained elusive as more Jewish settlers moved into the occupied Palestinian territories, particularly in the West Bank and Gaza. In 1987, frustration and anger among Palestinians boiled over into a violent uprising known as the First Intifada. It began in the Jabalia refugee camp after an Israeli military truck collided with two Palestinian civilian vans, killing 4 people. This incident sparked widespread protests and violence that resulted in hundreds of deaths on both sides. The First Intifada eventually led to a peace process, culminating in the Oslo Accords, signed in 1993 and 1995. The first accord was signed in Washington, D.C., and the second in Taba, Egypt. Under these agreements, the West Bank was divided into 3 areas. Area A, fully controlled by Palestinians. Area B, jointly controlled by Palestinians and Israelis. And Area C, fully controlled by Israel. For a moment, it seemed like a step toward peace. But hope was short-lived. In 2000, further peace talks failed to resolve key issues like the status of Jerusalem, the right of Palestinian refugees to return, and the growing number of Jewish settlements in Palestinian territories. Tensions flared again when Ariel Sharon, who later became Israel's prime minister, visited the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, a site sacred to both Jews and Muslims. Many Palestinians saw this as a provocation, and the Second Intifada erupted, bringing more violence and suffering. Though Israel eventually withdrew from Gaza in 2005, settlement activity continued in the West Bank, fueling ongoing resentment. The conflict took on a new dimension with the rise of Hamas, a Sunni Islamist group dedicated to destroying the State of Israel and establishing an Islamic State in its place. After a power struggle with Fatah, the group managing the PLO, Hamas gained control of Gaza in 2007. Israel responded by imposing a strict blockade on Gaza, severely limiting the movement of goods and people. This led to several deadly conflicts in the Gaza Strip, including military operations by Israel, named Operation Cast Lead in 2008-2009, Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012, and Operation Protective Edge in 2014, each resulting in significant loss of life and destruction. In 2014, Hamas and Fatah agreed to form a national unity government, but the underlying tensions persisted. In 2018, the United States moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a decision many Palestinians saw as American support for Israel's claim to Jerusalem as its capital. This move further strained relations. Then, in 2021, violence flared again in East Jerusalem due to a series of hostile events, leading to clashes between Israelis and Palestinians. A ceasefire, brokered by Egypt, Qatar, and the United Nations, was finally reached on May 21st, but it was a fragile peace at best. Today, the Israel-Palestine conflict remains a deeply rooted and complex territorial dispute. Though there are moments of calm, the unresolved issues, land, identity, and the right to exist in peace, continue to simmer beneath the surface. This is a story of two peoples, each with a profound connection to the same land, each longing for security and a place to call home. It's a reminder of how history can shape the present and how difficult it can be to find common ground after centuries of pain and mistrust. Thank you for taking the time to learn about this important piece of history. If you found this video insightful, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that help us understand the world we live in today.